I want to talk with you about how it is that the world today is now at the proverbial finish line prophetically. And by that I mean, in terms of Bible prophecy, we've reached the end and are about to cross this finish line. Can I say it like this? Pre-tribulation rapture finish line? And here's why. Bible prophecy is swiftly careening forward, which points to the rapture and commencement of the 7-year tribulation. I want to begin by drawing your attention to two significant developments that took place just this last week concerning Israel. You're already, should we just close in prayer? Or you guys already know exactly where I'm going, and for good reason. Now, it is interesting because these significant developments are concerning Israel, which I guess it could be said that Israel and the prophecies concerning Israel have seemingly taken a back seat over the last 2+ years. But here's the thing. The prophecies in the Bible concerning Israel, of which there are many, they may have taken a back seat, but they're still in the same fast-moving vehicle. In other words, it wasn't put on pause. There have been significant developments. Actually, it could be argued that they've even accelerated as they speed forward toward their prophesied end according to the Bible. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to do something that you might remember a school teacher asking you when you were young. I need you to put your thinking cap on. I used to hate that when the teacher would say that to me, but because I want to go over several prophecies. There's a number of them here. And it might seem voluminous, like there's a lot of these, but you guys can do it. And every single one of the prophecies that I want us to look at all connect. And let me say it this way, even intersect. And specifically, as it relates to how they speak to the geopolitical positioning of the nations that invade Israel, and not only invade Israel, but also divide Jerusalem. And here's what I mean by connect and intersect. The common denominator with all of these prophecies that we're going to go over, they tie into this final global government, global religion, and global economy. So, you ready? Ezekiel, I love you guys. Ezekiel 38. Very well known. I'd like to read verses 1 through 6. This is a well-known prophecy concerning a yet future invasion of Israel. And we're told, verse 1, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around and put hooks in your jaws and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. Now, verse 5, for the benefit of those who are relatively new to Bible prophecy, we have I'll call it a grocery list of nations that are named by their ancient names, starting with Persia, which we know today to be modern-day Iran. Cush and Put, this would be the region of Ethiopia, etc. And will be with them all with shields and helmets, also Gomer, with all its troops. And Beit Togarma, that's actually the Arabic. Beit means house of Togarma, or Beth Togarma, from the far north with all its troops and the many nations with you. So I wanted to stop at verse 6, but don't leave that yet, because I want to draw your attention to verse 13 in a moment, but I need to kind of set the stage here. So we have this list of nations, and for the purpose of our update today, let's just talk about the main three that are at the helm of this Allied invasion of Israel. It is Russia, Iran, and Turkey. Now, there are other nations involved. And it is believed, and present company included, that all of the nations that are listed in this prophecy are already at the ready, particularly in Syria, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So, the first 6 verses provide us now with the who, but let's talk about the what and the why. That's verse 13. After listing the nations that will invade Israel, verse 13 tells us who will not be invading, and it is interesting, not just the nations that are listed in this prophecy that are part of this Allied invasion, but those that are conspicuously absent completely from the prophecy, i.e. Egypt, no mention. Jordan, no mention. How about this one? Syria. You would think Syria's right there. We'll come back to Syria, but they're not included in this. What about the Arabian Peninsula? We know it today as Saudi Arabia. The reason it's Saudi Arabia and not Wahhabi Arabia, this isn't in my notes, but I already opened up the can, so let me explain this. It went to the house of Saud, not the Wahhabis, but the Saudis. When that area we know as the Arabian Peninsula was given to Beit Saud, Ibn Saud, the family, the house of Saud, hence the name Saudi Arabia. Now in verse 13, we're told what their ancient name was before it was Saudi Arabia. And it's very key, and it's in fact germane to our understanding of this prophecy, which is a key prophecy. And it's Sheba and Dedan. This is the area we know today as the Gulf area, Saudi Arabia, those Gulf states, those oil-rich states, as they're referred to. Well, we're told about them in verse 13. And the merchants of Tarshish, I know there's a lot of debate and speculation. Time doesn't permit, nor do we need to necessarily go there. And all her villages will say to you. Now, this is the why behind the what of this invasion. Have you come to plunder? Have you gathered your hoards to loot, to carry off silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods, and to seize much plunder? Answer, yes. It's not in the text, but that's exactly what they're doing. Which presupposes a couple of things first. Chief of which is that Israel has to be a nation in order for Ezekiel 38 to be fulfilled. Well, that happened May 14th, 1948. So we can check that box. Another thing has to happen. Once Israel was reborn as a nation, which was another huge prophecy, that really started the ball rolling, the clock ticking. You can choose whatever metaphor you want on that one. But it also presupposes that once Israel's back in the land, they are prospering and rich and wealthy, and they have silver, gold, livestock, good. They have all of this plunder to seize, and they do. So we can check that box too. Now, why is verse 13 so germane to our understanding of Ezekiel's prophecy? Because, and stay with me, if you've got Russia, Iran, Turkey, et al., all in Syria as we speak, at the ready to fulfill exactly what we're told in this prophecy in Ezekiel that was written some 2,500 plus years ago. And you've got Saudi Arabia, who all of a sudden it would appear is kind of chummy with Israel. Well, that's what it says. They're protesting this invasion. They're questioning this alliance of nations. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Are you going to take what Israel has? It almost sounds like Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and some of these other countries that currently have wonderful foreign relations with Israel, as we speak again, are not going to be part of this because they are on Israel's side of the table, if I can say it like that. So hang on to that. Let's talk about Syria. You know this one well. Isaiah 17:1. It's also in Jeremiah 49, but it's a prophecy against Damascus. What's the prophecy? See, behold, Damascus will no longer be a city, but will become a heap of ruins. So here's what I'm thinking. This invasion from the north, Ezekiel 38, comes vis-a-vis Syria. And the fulfillment of Isaiah 17:1 explains the conspicuous absence of Syria being involved in this alliance of nations that invades Israel. We already have verse 13 of Ezekiel 38 explaining to us where Saudi Arabia and those nations are in this equation and prophecy, but we really haven't had an explanation until Isaiah 17:1 as to why it is. I mean, it would stand to reason that Syria would certainly be involved, right? Well, if it's destroyed, then that would explain why Syria is not involved. I know that might seem like a firm grasp of the obvious, but it seems like the target is not just Israel, but Jerusalem. So let's talk about Zechariah chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens, and layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege, both against Judah and Jerusalem. And then verse 3, and in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone, boundary stone, heavy stone for all people. All that burden themselves, try to move the boundary stones, try to cut up Jerusalem, divide Jerusalem, all that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. at the risk of an oversimplification, this is, again, a well-known prophecy that speaks to how the entire world will have this intoxicating obsession with dividing Jerusalem into two states, with Jews and Palestinians, so-called, no such thing, Jews and Palestinians living side by side together in, quote, peace and security. You want to come back to that? And again, I know you know where I'm going with that. So the focus now is not just on Israel, but really the target, where the goalposts are, is Jerusalem and the dividing of Jerusalem. And then there's another prophecy in Joel chapter 3. I want to read verses 1 and 2. For behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. Then I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my inheritance, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and, listen, they have divided up, keyword, my land. Oh, oops. No, that's my land. My name is on it. Literally, by the way, we've talked about that prior. God literally put his name on Jerusalem. That's my land. Jerusalem, that's mine. And you're trying to divide it up? Yeah, Joey. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Because in that day, I will judge those that divide my land. Now, 1 Thessalonians 5:3, again, very well known. You'll usually, I want to venture to say, and I'll just put a percentage on it, probably in the high 90s in terms of a percentage, and that's maybe conservative, but when you hear these two words, peace and security, over 90% of the time, it's in the context of the aforementioned two-state solution. Now, I've been studying Bible prophecy for many, many years, and I actually have in my archives files from, I know this is going to date me, but back in the late 80s. I was only 5. But I have archive files of world leaders saying these two exact words, peace and security, within the context of a two-state solution, which I believe is Hitler's final solution repackaged. And the reason I say that is because when one Yasser Arafat was still alive, remember him? You're trying to forget him? Well, when he was still alive and he would come to the U.S., he would say, we want peace with Israel. No, you don't. Because then he'd go right back to Ramallah and in Arabic say, peace for us means the destruction of Israel. And it's no wonder, because it's in the Quran with Muhammad before and then Saladin after. The whole point of Islam is to make peace with your enemy, then destroy them. Enter 1 Thessalonians 5:3. This is going to change the whole complexion of this prophecy. For when they say peace and security, then sudden destruction comes upon, and I like this word a lot, them. I'm not a them. Them. As labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and here's another word I like, similar, and they shall not escape. This is in the context of the Apostle Paul by the Holy Spirit writing about the rapture, and he delineates between they and we, them and us. They will not escape, but we who are alive and remain will be caught up, raptured up. Harpazo in the Greek. The Latin, raptors. That's where you get the word rapture. We. So if you hear nothing else that I say today, hear this. Be a we. Okay, good. We're good? Let's talk about Daniel 9:27 now. This is, again, very well known, very important prophets. They're all important, but I'm tying stuff together, and I hope it'll all fit here in a moment. This prophecy provides us with specificity because we're told here that he, speaking of the Antichrist, will confirm a covenant. Now, I think I would be remiss if I didn't explain the meaning of this word confirm, which has been the subject of much in the way of debate and conversation amongst Bible students and Bible prophecy teachers. In the Hebrew, it's the same word as it is in my native tongue of Arabic. It's the Arabic and Hebrew word ikbir, which means superior, spectacular, stronger, greater. This is in other words, there's something already on the table. It just needs to be confirmed, made bigger, greater, enforced, perhaps. It's kind of hard because when you talk about other translations in other languages, it's that textbook case of it gets lost in the translation. And this is one of those cases. There's not really an English word to really describe what this word means in the original. It is a word that implies that this is a covenant, a peace agreement, that will be made great, strong. It will be implemented. It will be enforced. It will be finally signed, and you'll forgive the word, but for lack of a better one, executed. I should have chosen a different word than that. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. That's 7 years. In the middle of the 7, now we're talking about the 7-year tribulation. And by the way, parenthetically, let me say that it is not the rapture that starts the 7-year tribulation. It's the fulfillment specifically of Daniel 9:27 that starts the 7-year tribulation. Once Daniel 9:27 is fulfilled, the 7-year tribulation starts. And in the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple, stop right there, this infers, obviously, that at some point at the beginning of, maybe even prior to, that temple's going to get rebuilt. Because at the 3.5-year mark, it's already not only fully built, it's fully functioning. And they're offering sacrifices. And so we're told that he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. And then lastly, 2 Thessalonians 2:4. This comports with Daniel 9:27. The Apostle Paul writing to the Thessalonians in the context of the rapture prior to the 7-year tribulation says, he, speaking of the Antichrist, opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, declaring himself to be God. When does he do that? Well, we just got done reading Daniel 9:27 at the midpoint. And it's believed that it's at this point when Israel realizes, wait a minute, this is not our Messiah. This is the false Messiah that's just committed this abomination that causes desolation. He declares himself to be God. Again, much in the way of speculation on the part of Bible students of Bible prophecy and Bible prophecy teachers. But it is believed that he will commit this abomination and it will cause desolation, and Israel will realize this is the false Christ, and that will be what brings them to their true Christ, Jesus the Christ. And they will flee for the last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation and be protected by God himself. Many believe, present company included again, that this will be in the ancient city of Petra, which is in modern-day Jordan. Actually, just a little side note, it's believed that that's where Job lived, was actually in Petra. I've only been there once, my wife and I. This was BC, before children, and just want to clarify that. And it was in the 90s, and actually my cousin took us there because I have family there in Jordan. And man, you need to take several days to see this entire. It is just breathtaking. It is just stunning. It is a impenetrable rock fortress that Israel will flee Jerusalem and Israel from to get to be protected for the last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation. Okay, let's try to connect some of these prophetic dots here. So we've got prophecies that describe in some detail that at the time of the end, there's going to be this man, this antichrist figure, which, by the way, doesn't just mean against Christ, but in the place of Christ, because apparently he sets himself up as God in the temple of God, declaring himself to be God. So this man will then, once he does this, it seems, will also be the one that says, hey, if you'll sign right here, I'll throw in the temple, no extra charge. Daniel 9:27. So that's what enforces and strengthens, makes Hikbir, this 7-year covenant. And once that happens, then the 7 years begins. And that's the last 7 years of human history as we know human history to be presently. But we're also told that there's going to be an invasion of Israel, that there's going to be this intoxicating obsession with the dividing of Jerusalem. And it would stand to reason that if these prophecies, which again all intersect and connect, it would stand to reason that you would start seeing some of it beginning to come to pass. In other words, you would start seeing some political maneuvering, geopolitical repositioning of the nations that are in these prophecies, right? So the question is, are we? The answer is, you better believe it. On Tuesday, Times of Israel published a report. You know, sometimes, and you'll forgive me for my, God's got a sense of humor, so that's my story and I'm sticking with it. I know my humor isn't always appreciated, but sometimes I just wonder, do these people get up in the morning and go on their news feed and then go to Ezekiel 38 and go, man, we better get this show on the road. Get Putin, get him on the phone. Get Erdogan, he's in there. And the IEC, we got an invasion scheduled. Okay, again, that's my humor, so whatever. So this was Tuesday. Here's the headline. In Tehran, Putin, Raisi, and Erdogan vow to continue Syria cooperation. Oh, they must have included Isaiah 17:1 in their briefing too, apparently. Here's a couple of quotes. Russian President Vladimir Putin, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan held a trilateral meeting in Tehran on Tuesday. The three leaders agreed to continue consultations and cooperation to, quote, eliminate terrorists in Syria. In a statement following their meeting, the three countries reaffirmed the determination to continue their ongoing cooperation in order to ultimately eliminate terrorist individuals, groups, undertakings, and entities while ensuring, I'm sorry for my chuckling, the protection of the civilians and civilian infrastructure in accordance with international humanitarian law, the statement read. I'm just going to leave that one there. Also from the Times of Israel, this is on Saturday, comes this report concerning Saudi Arabia and Israel. Remember? They're going to be together on this against this allied invasion with Russia, Iran, and Turkey at the helm. So at some point, Saudi Arabia and Israel have to have something in place. Well, they do, and they will. Here's what the headline read. Saudi minister, peace with Israel, strategic option, but not before two-state solution. Okay. That's Ezekiel 38. That's Zechariah 12:1-3. That's Isaiah 17:1. That's Joel 3:1-2. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Daniel 9:27. And 2 Thessalonians 2:4, all wrapped up into one nice, tidy, neat little package. Would you agree? Exactly as we were told. Every single one of these nations are doing exactly what we're told they would do at the time of the end. So let me just quote this article real quick. In it they say, a senior Saudi minister described normalizing ties with Israel, Saudi Arabia normalizing ties with Israel as a strategic option while clarifying that a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians was a requirement before Riyadh would formalize ties with Jerusalem. It's almost like, where do you sign? They're already ready. Is that even a proper sentence structure? It probably isn't. They're already ready. They're just waiting for the green light. And I think that green light's coming. Now here's where I'm going with this. The common denominator with all of this is that there's one man, the man of perdition, aka the Antichrist, who will be at the helm of all of this. In other words, he will control the world, a one-world government, a one-world religion, and a one-world economy in and during the 7-year tribulation. Now here's a question. How? How is it plausible and conceivable that this man of sin, as he's also known, is going to actually gain control of the entire world in this way. He will be worshiped. He will be the one man that will be seen as the Savior of the world, for the world, to solve all of the problems in the world. How is that even going to be possible? Well, it's going to be possible because Satan will possess this man. He will be the personification of Satan himself. And thankfully, the Word of God provides us with the answer, which is what I want to now address for the remainder of our time. But to do so, we'll end the Facebook and YouTube, live stream at this time.